Welcome to the Glaze room at Tallahassee Clay Arts. In this video, we'll be briefly covering glaze care, materials, and cleanup. When choosing your glazing method, we have two options in the glaze room. You can brush on your glaze with the pint glazes, or you can dunk your pieces in the large glaze buckets. There is a third spraying option, which we will cover in another video. First, we will be covering the brush-on method. Your typical setup for brushing glazes will include your choice of glazes, brushes, water, your pieces, and something to clean up with. The glaze books we have in the studio are a wonderful resource if you're looking to explore glaze combinations. There are photo examples of most of our glazes as well as combinations for layering glazes. Amico also has online resources if you're looking for something specific. When glazing, you will typically use 3 to 6 layers, drying in between. Make sure the bottoms of your pieces are clean of glaze. Anything touching the kiln shelf should be clean, whether it be with wax or wiped off after the glaze application. After you're done, please be sure to wipe off the rim of the glaze jars as well as any drips on the sides of the jar. Please make sure to return your glaze jar to the correct spot on the shelf. Every once in a while, you may find a glaze that isn't up to par. It may be too thick, stinky, or empty. The glaze should be somewhat thick, but if it won't mix or is way too thick, you can try adding a little bit of water and blend it using the immersion blender in the kitchen. If the jar is empty, we have many of our popular glazes in large jugs for you to refill it. We use the pints because they're convenient and have a lot of useful information regarding that specific glaze on the label. When refilling, please use extra caution and make sure the code matches the code of the glaze you're refilling. We invite you to help the studio run smoothly by refilling these when the pints get low. The glazes on the right side of the shelf are from other manufacturers other than Amico. If they need a little help, you can help maintain these by adding a small amount of water if it's too difficult to brush on, and stirring thoroughly. Always return glazes to their proper place when finished. If your glaze jar is empty and there's no jug to refill it, or if it's extra stinky, you can place the jar in the kitchen. Be sure to leave a note for Sue. If you want to dip your pieces, we have many bucket glazes to choose from. More glazes are being added and changed regularly in the studio. This is an efficient and faster way to glaze your pieces. The tiles above the bucket glazes showcase each one, and the tiles to the left demonstrate possible combinations. These tiles will be updated as glazes change around. If you discover an interesting combination, please show Sue and we can add a test tile to our collection. You may not want to use your beautiful piece to test a new glaze combination. You can make your own test tiles, or you can use one of our test pieces to find the perfect glaze combination. These tiles are free, and it costs nothing to test glazes, so get out there and discover something new. Once you choose which glaze you want, you'll want to stir it thoroughly with the brush stirrer located inside each bucket. Notice how thick this one is. You have to stir it, making sure to scrub the bottom and sides to incorporate the material that has settled. If you prefer to use less of your own energy, you can use the drill with the mixer located nearby. Always wash between mixing different glazes and make sure to never leave the tool in the water. Once your glaze is ready, you can then use the tongs to dip your piece. For successive dips, you can move the tongs to different spots to obscure the previous marks. Get to know your glazes. Each glaze is different. Some you dip and count to 3, some you may need to dip more than once, allowing the glaze to dry in between coats, and for others you may want to dip quickly. It's all about testing and experimenting. Applying your glaze for different shapes and sizes takes time to learn. It's a good idea to take notes and photographs of your application process so you can eventually see good, repeatable results. Glaze viscosity is something that is always being managed. Unlike the pints, adding water to the large buckets can be problematic. We don't recommend adding any water to these. If you're having issues with the bucket glazes, please bring it up with the studio assistant and we will address it. Once your piece is set up, you can use a sponge to wipe off the glaze from the bottom. This is a quick method for dipping and cleaning. Alternatively, applying wax to the bottom and allowing it to dry before dipping may work out better for some pieces and for some people. It just depends on what your preference is. If you need help with using the big bucket glazes, or your piece can't be dunked because it can't fit into the bucket, you can use the pouring tools and cups in this drawer. Alternatively, we also have a pouring bucket for you to use. It's located in the hand building room on a shelf. This allows you to spot pour or over pour onto your piece. You can then pour the remaining glaze back into the appropriate bucket. You also have the option of tinting clear glazes, white glazes, or slips. These are like the spices in the studio. You don't need a lot to tint your material as they fire darker in the final firing. They also often appear pastel-like or desaturated compared to the colors in the jars. Use the paper guide on the wall to determine how much stain you will need for your project. You can use the Dixie cups and measuring spoons provided in the studio. There is a bucket of white slip that you can use for mixing your own underglazes. This can be used on top of any clay we use here. You will want to mix the bucket of slip first before getting a cupful. Alternatively, we also provide a red color slip, or terracotta color here. You won't need to use mason stains to tint this red slip. When you use the mason stains to tint slip, essentially it's like you're making your own underglazes, which we do have a bunch available in the studio. These are manufactured underglazes. They're essentially tinted slips. We have two sides, one here and one here. Those will typically be fired with a clear glaze to bring out the true colors and can be applied before or after a bisque firing. When you're finished with your glazing process, you need to know the proper procedure for cleaning brushes. Begin by rinsing brushes in your bucket of water. After this, the brushes are still not clean enough. To remove the tiny particles, we will need to use a bit of Murphy's oil soap. Pour some into the bowl with the brush cleaning bar. Clean the bristles in your hand down to the base of the brush, and then rinse in a bucket of clean water. Repeat this process until the water comes out clear. The red glazes can be pretty persistent. We try to be efficient with the amount of water we use in the studio. Try not to rinse in running water. As much as possible, rinse in buckets. When they're done, place brushes on a flat surface to dry. If you see dry, clean brushes in the studio, go ahead and bring them back to their homes. At this point, we can start adding the extra glaze into the glaze reclaim bucket. To do this, first decant the top liquid from the glaze bucket into the sink, preventing the glaze sediment from pouring out also. Do the same thing with your glaze water. Then you can pour the remaining slurry into the big bucket. It's as simple as that. Oops, mistakes happen, but it's important to clean up drips after glazing. The mop is located in the kitchen on the back of the private door. Mop covers are usually located next to the mop, but if there are none, they may be outside drying. Push the button to collapse the mop, add the cover, and simply snap into place. Use a bit of cleaning solution and water mixed together to clean your area. We don't want dusty, dry clay or glaze being kicked up in the studio. When mopping, it's always a good idea to clean more than the mess you made. Sometimes splashes travel, and you'll want to use a wet microfiber cloth to clean vertical surfaces. If we all work together, we can keep the studio clean and safe. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoy your day at the studio.